Why do people continue to repeat the very things they don't want to repeat? What is the cause? Because it ends up, John, we've seen it, they end up sabotaging the very things they want to build, create relationships and things like that. I want to read to you a quote from Dr. Henry Cloud. He's Mr. Boundaries Man. He says, what does it feel like to be where you are right now? And I think he's asking each and every one of us that question. Take some time to really reflect, feel, smell, and imagine your current state. Then look to your future. Can you imagine taking everything you are feeling right now with you? Let that dissatisfaction you now feel fuel your movement for improvement. So I want to ask everyone who's listening today, do you feel like you are trapped in a cycle? To answer what Dr. Cloud asked us, do you want to bring forth bitterness, anger, sorrow, depression, offense? Do you want to bring those things into your future? Because the truth is that you really are probably not going to move into the future that you want to see happen if you're trying to carry all those weights and sins with you. So today we're going to talk about breaking that cycle and taking back some of the territory the enemy has stolen.
You know, Lisa, God says in Deuteronomy 2:8, you have circled this mountain long enough.
Yes.
So all of us have mountains in our lives that we seem to just keep circling, and it's because we haven't broken the cycle. And a lot of times those cycles are there because of us not addressing them.
Yeah. And I do feel like people will live more in the past than dream their way into the future. And I think a lot of times,
really good.
I know for me, I kept going back like, God, why am I this way? Why did this happen? Why, when this happened. And I kept looking back. So what was happening was I was going back because I was looking back, because where you look is where you're going to go. And so people keep going around the same mountain over and over again because it is familiar. But if you want to break a cycle, you're going to have to address those things and move beyond that. So the first one we're going to talk about is stopping the cycle.
Can you just camp on something profound that you just said?
What was that?
Where you're looking is where you're going to go.
Yes.
All right. So is there a reason that Paul said, I forget those things which are behind and press toward the mark, the prize of the high calling of God? So in other words, what Paul was saying is if I keep looking at the past, I'm going to stay in the past.
That's right.
But if I look at the high call, and the high calling is Jesus Christ. You know, God's number one goal for every one of his children, I mean, this we can say, is to be conformed to the image of his son, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's his number one goal. If you want to put all goals in together, and you want to say, what is the number one that God wants for you? He wants you to be conformed. So the high calling he's talking about is to be conformed, because he actually says that in that chapter.
And, people that would be like, wait, I don't want to be conformed. He's talking about you being transformed and conformed into his image, who he created you to do. And again, I do believe becoming who God created us to be is one of the number one ways to break a cycle.
So just one more thing. I believe this is why the writer of Hebrews tells us, let us keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. So again, the number one way to break a cycle is to realize if you keep looking at what you're doing and just stay there, keep focused on that, you're going to keep repeating it.
Yeah. If you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're not going to get a different result. And so if you find yourself, I'm listening to you, John and Lisa, and yes, this year is just like last year, and last year was like the year before, and I am trapped in a cycle, then we're going to invite you to do something to disrupt the cycle, to actually bring forth some changes. It could be a relationship cycle. It could be a mindset. It could be attitudes. It could be behaviors. John, have you ever had a cycle? I feel like I'm always the one with bad examples on these kind of things. Have you ever had a cycle where you felt trapped?
Well, yeah. I mean, if we go back to the 1980s, the worst cycle for me was the trap of pornography. I couldn't get away from it. And I just kept going back to it when I felt lonely, when I felt depressed, when I felt even
and we were married,
needy. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I just was like, it was instant gratification. So I had to realize, okay, wait a minute. I'm looking for a quick instant gratification. And I had to realize, okay, number one, Jesus said, you look at a woman to lust after you've committed adultery already in her heart. Okay, that was the first thing that really got my
not her heart.
In your heart, in your heart. And that's the first thing that got my attention. The second thing that got my attention is, why does this reoccur? If I already know this now, why do I keep doing this? And I had to address that. Well, what I realized was that there had to be a disruption. There had to be, I got uncomfortable enough with that to where I said, there has to be a change. And that caused me to go on a 4-day fast to seek God to say, this has got to go. And what do I need to do to get it to go? And that's when God revealed to me what a lot of men have gotten help with. We have our course on the app called Porn Free, the Killing Kryptonite book. And so many men have come up and said, man, I got free, because it took a wrestling. Nobody was talking about it, Lisa, to us.
Yeah. And things grow in the silence, those kind of shameful things.
Yeah.
You know, I know that God told me, he said, your past is not your future unless you want it to be. He said, if you just keep studying your past, you'll become an expert of living in the past, not in your future. So if you're there and you're trying to make sense out of something that maybe started this cycle in your life, then you know what? It's time to stop looking for those life-giving things among the dead things of your past. It's time for you to begin to lift your eyes and begin to look for what Jesus has done.